really love this guy, man. I just got a chance to become friends with him over the last couple months here. John McMullen joins us now from Birds 365 and does a great show with Jody Mack, the legendary Jody Mack. And brother, I love it, man. I mean, I watch you guys all the time, man. I mean, Philadelphia sports. Let me give this to you, John. And I kind of broached this with you before. So I when Jerome Brown first got drafted to the Eagles, I go, "What's it like there?" He goes, "Dude, these people love the living you-know-what out of this team." I go, "Look, they love the Flyers. You know, they love the Phillies. They love all their sports teams. They're super passionate about it." He goes, "But the Eagles, there's nothing like being a Philadelphia Eagle in a town. And when you're good, man, you're like a god. You go anywhere. You're not paying for anything. It's just something about being a Philadelphia Eagle in that town, isn't it, John? Where, I mean, you're like a walking god when you're in that town, especially when you're good."
Yeah, you're right, Dan. They're incredibly passionate fans. And, you know, there's two sides to that sword. And we just went through the bad side with Carson Wentz. I mean, there's such pressure to perform. And you mentioned, but when you're a Jerome Brown, when you're a Reggie White back in the day, yeah, I mean, you're a legend. You're good. Brian Dawkins forever. You know, Jody and I were talking about, I don't know if you saw, but there was a big thing about this Carson Wentz banner on Lincoln Financial Field. I'm like, who cares? Who cares? They'll have it down for the first preseason game. But the fans are going nuts about it. And I'm saying to myself, I don't even get it. And I'm here. But there's such passion for this team. And they want everything, this team to be successful. And you're right. When you reach the heights and you're great, it's unbelievable. But there's the downside to that if you don't perform, man, you're going to take some hits, and you're going to take some significant hits that you're not going to take in other cities. And that's why I think people are at least some people look at Carson Wentz in Indianapolis and say maybe he can get things going back there because it's more laid back. It just is.
Let me give you a spin then on this. Two guys, and I'm going to bring up three guys. Brady, I think it's week 4. He's going back to New England, and he's going to be playing against the Patriots up there at Gillette. I think the Patriot fans are going to cheer the guy, and Boston's a pretty tough town too, okay, when it comes to their sports fans. I think they're going to cheer him, and then I think it's going to be because of the equity that he built up in that city by winning those 6 championships, that Brady's going to be looked at like when Orr went to Chicago and they moved into Chicago, or when Ray Bork went to Colorado with the Avalanche. He played all those legendary years in Boston, and that city still, no matter what those guys did every other place. And I would say even Andy Reid with Philly. I got to think, though, in a city like Philadelphia, if Andy Reid comes back and he brings that Kansas City team into Lincoln Financial, how do you think the fans would revere him?
Well, they revere him. I mean, Andy's been back. And
would they cheer him?
Yeah, I think they cheer Andy Reid at this point. But remember, Dan, you bring up Boston. You're right about Boston. Boston's the same way. It's the whole Northeast corridor. But how do you boo Tom Brady? I mean, he's got 6 for you. He's got 6. Even if you want to boo him, you can't boo him. I mean, he's such a legend. And he never got over the hump here. So at the end, there were a lot of fans who said, okay, it's time. We got to move on from this guy. And then as time went by, they say, okay, he really is a great coach. Good for him. He finally got a Super Bowl title. And by the way, that was easier for Eagles fans to take because they finally got their own. I think if they didn't get their own, maybe there would still be some disharmony with Andy Reid. But, man, you can't compare anybody to Tom Brady. I mean, the guy's at the White House cracking jokes. He's talking about playing to 46. We talk about goats all the time, Dan. Hey, you're a goat I always say you're a goat in the weight room, right? Miami and Maryland. Tom Brady is on a different level. He's on a Michael Jordan level. I mean, that's where he is. He's got 6. How angry could you be at him if you're in Boston?
Let me throw this at you, too. When you think of Philly fans and you're looking at 2 coaches, I just mentioned Andy Reid. Dick Vermeil did the same thing.
Yeah,
Do you think that kind of tempered it a little bit when Dick took that team to a Super Bowl also, the same way that Andy Reid took the Eagles to a Super Bowl, didn't get over the hump. But when Vermeil won that Super Bowl in St. Louis with the Rams, was it kind of like, that's what maybe made it easier for Eagle fans to understand when Andy won that title in Kansas City that, hey, look, man, they didn't get it done here, but they had great years here. We respect these guys. You think Vermeil is looked at in the same light as what Andy is, or is Andy considered the greatest coach in Eagle history? And I would say to you, even though Peterson won the Super Bowl and maybe arguably some of the best years in Eagle history since the Super Bowl era, it seems to me that those two coaches are revered by Eagle fans, at least since the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, I mean, Andy's the best coach in Eagles history. Certainly, modern Eagles history. I don't think it's even close. He's not the most popular. Dick Vermeil's the most popular. And probably Buddy Ryan might be the second most popular, to be honest. I mean, it's a personality thing. When Dick left, Dick's still here, by the way, and he came back, and he was always on I-95 in Philadelphia. He had this big billboard. He was a Blue Cross spokesman. He's always been beloved in this town, always, because he's the nicest guy in the world. And it never wavered. Even when he left, even when he was the head coach of other teams, he was still beloved in Philadelphia. Andy, because of his personality, because of the fact he couldn't get over the hump. People get spoiled, Dan. I always say the Green Bay Packers fans, they're the most spoiled of all. I mean, they've had 30 consecutive years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. 30 consecutive years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. And they haven't gotten over the hump. They say, well, Favre's only got one. Rodgers has only got one. You know what other fan bases would have to have only one? I mean, they would love it. They're spoiled. Eagles fans got a little spoiled with Andy Reid because you had all the playoff appearances, all the NFC Championship game appearances, and they expected that. And then it became, if you don't give me the Super Bowl, you stink. So he had a little bit of that taint on him when he left. And then time heals all wounds. And people kind of got back and said, okay, Andy is really a good coach. And I think he's more respected. I don't know if he's loved because of the personality, but he's certainly respected.
Half the city rooting for Carson Wentz?
No.
Even though if he has success in Indianapolis this year, this is where passion sometimes blinds fans and fandom here, John, because if this guy does well, that thing turns into a first-round pick. So, I mean, that enhances the opportunity for assets for the Eagles moving forward to keep rebuilding the team. But what happened here actually then must have really just been a really bad taste in the fan base's mouth if you're not even rooting for the guy, and it would benefit you if he has some type of success in Indianapolis.
Yeah, they want him to play 75% of the snaps and stink up the joint, which is probably not going to happen. That's what they want, though. They feel for the most part that he checked out on the team. He gave up on the team. And it's not fair. I don't think it's fair, but I often point this. You can say whatever you want about Carson Wentz, and I criticize him for not taking the Jalen Hurts draft pick a little bit better. But man, that doesn't happen in this league, Dan. You're 27 years old. You're 10 months off the historic contract extension, and they're taking a quarterback at 53. It's never happened before in the Super Bowl era. You could talk about the Packers taking Rodgers. Favre was old. Jordan Love. Rodgers is old. You could at least, look at the team and say, okay, I get what you're trying to do. Jimmy Garoppolo in New England when Brady was still there. I get what you're trying to do. When you're 27 and you've just been given the most guaranteed money in the history of the NFL at the time, and they're taking another quarterback at 53? Let's put it this way. If the Eagles had that choice back, and by the way, Dan, this has nothing to do with Jalen Hurts, the player. They would not make that pick because now they understand The night of the draft, I called it a laboratory pick. I called it a vacuum pick. It looks fine inside a vacuum when you don't take human nature into effect. Now they look back with revisionist history and say this really affected our quarterback. And when they made that pick, and here's the point, Dan, they wanted a cost-effective backup. There was no thought that Jalen Hurts would be the starter of the team. They made a big mistake. He should have handled it better, but they made a big mistake.
Absolutely. I called it a seatbelt draft where, because the guy had been hurt so much, they weren't doing it to replace him.
No.
They were doing it to cover their ass. And like you said, John, they've got to do things when you're balancing your salary cap. You can't have high-priced guys at that position, at both positions, your backup and your starter. So no question. Let me get into this upcoming season here. Where do you think this Eagle team fits into the NFC East?
On paper, it's not good. I mean, it's tough to believe in this team because you have a quarterback who started 4 games and completed 52% of his passes, which is dismal. And in the modern NFL, you got to complete 65 in your average. So he's got to get better really quickly. And you have a rookie head coach. So you kind of look at it and say, even though it's a bad division, Dallas has Dak Prescott back. The Washington football team, I think they're going to win the division. I think they're the most well-rounded team. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick can at least play at a level where he can make that defense. They're going to have a top 5 defense. So all they need is to stay away from mistakes, game manager. You're going to have the occasional tragic game, but he'll bounce back and he'll play well enough. And then the Giants have Saquon Barkley back. So on paper, I think they look like the worst team in the division. However, we know how this league is built on parity, Dan. And I always say, as a fan of any particular team, if you want to, you can talk yourself into a lot of things. And what I mean by that is everybody has good players in the NFL. So if you want to be a glass is half empty guy,
we are going to try to reconnect here with John here in a second. I really love that where he was going here. Glass half full. Here we go. Okay, continue your point. Glass half full here, John. Go ahead.
Glass is half empty guy, glass is half full. What I'm trying to say, you look at Dallas and say, okay, they have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and all these weapons and Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott's back. How are we going to stop that offense with the Eagles cornerbacks? So that's the way if you want to be negative. If you want to be positive, you say to yourself, well, the Eagles might have a top 5 offensive line. If Lane Johnson is healthy, Brandon Brooks is healthy, Jason Kelsey's there, that's top 5 all day. They still have Fletcher Cox. They still have Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat. They have a deep defensive line, certainly could be top 10 in the league. As a former defensive tackle, if you can block people in this league and you can rush the passer, you can win some games. So do you want to be positive or do you want to be negative? You can talk yourself into a lot of things.
Absolutely here. And, you mentioned Lane Johnson and, follow me along my thinking here and tell me because you're around the team and you know how this team has responded to criticism, to accolades, how they handled themselves after the Super Bowl. I'll tell you something that really impressed me about the group. Lane Johnson, and again, this guy, Michael Robinson from the NFL Network. And, I don't know how you take out of a coach who's around his players with helmets and shorts and OTAs and mini camps and stuff. And you go, well, there's guys whispering in the corner or doing things. I mean, you don't even know if this guy can handle like timeouts yet going into the half or at the end of games. You don't know his game management, how he does personnel settings. You have no idea until you get into exhibition games or until you get into at least the first quarter poll of the season. And yet Lane Johnson came out and the majority of the players, they put their name on it and they stamped it instead of these whispers. And I think that's been part of the issue with the Eagles over the last 2 years has been there's too much whispering going on in the corners, is that they rush to his defense. Hey, man, we really like what he's doing. I really like him. John, I've seen that stuff galvanize teams where it rallies the troops around one guy because they're pushing for that guy and they're pulling for that guy because that guy's being honest and genuine with them. You may like the rock, paper, scissors thing. You may not like that and all that other stuff that he's saying, but I took it from what the players were doing and they rallied around him. I took that as a positive. How did you take it?
Yeah, I think it's a positive, and especially when it's Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, players like that who are leaders of the team. I think it's great that they come to the defense of the head coach, who is a rookie and is unproven and all that stuff. But I will say, and you know this even better than me, I mean, we're talking about 90-man locker rooms in the offseason, Dan. You could line up the next 90 people you meet. They're not all going to like you. I mean, bottom line is there are people questioning Nick Sirianni. I mean, but why wouldn't they be? I don't think that's that big of a deal. Any rookie head coach in this league, especially when you're coming off, relative success. You had a Super Bowl, you had 3 playoff appearances with the former head coach, who, by the way, everyone loved player-wise. So it doesn't surprise me. Some guys are saying, "What the heck is this rock, paper, scissors? What is he doing?" But while I say that, I also don't think it's that big of a deal, and I think it's really important to get the veteran leaders on your side, and that part's a positive because Lane Johnson's on his side, Jason Kelsey. They're giving him a chance. Everybody deserves a chance. When the Eagles hired Doug Peterson, everyone said, this is going to be a disaster. And by the way, the Eagles could say whatever they want, Dan. They wanted to hire Adam Gase.
Yeah.
They wanted to hire Adam Gase. And when they didn't get Adam Gase, they wanted Ben McAdoo. And they ended up with Doug Peterson. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
I'll make a point to you here. After Jimmy's first year in Dallas, he's 1-15. He replaces Tom Landry. Skip Bayless, Randy Galloway, everybody was just banging on this guy. No way, college guy, never get it, never understand. This is what and I told you that I've been going back and forth with Nick, and we're supposed to get him on our show. Bob Lang said that over the next couple days. I said this, and I text this to him. I said, Jimmy Johnson, you had Dave Wannstedt go to him once and say this to him. Hey, Jimmy, man, maybe we should go to a 3-4 defense and not the 4-3. We're getting killed. We're 1-12 at the time. And Jimmy looked at him and went, no. We're going to stick to what we're doing. I've got to plan what we're doing. We're going to get there. And it resulted in 3 Super Bowls. I mean, so Sirianni sticks to what he's doing, sticks to his guns, and he at least sticks to his philosophy. And he's open-minded. I mean, I think there's a balance there. I think he's got a chance to succeed. And like you said, I mean, every coach that's a rookie coach, even Parcells, I mean, John gets questioned. That's why I think your point is really good point, because what rookie coach didn't? I mean, were they not howling at Dick Vermeil his first season?
Oh, yeah.
When he got to Philadelphia and saying, here's another college guy, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, go back to UCLA, dude. It ain't like that, here in Philly. And then he's, like you said, one of the most revered guys. So I see some positives. Are you seeing positives with Nick Sirianni? You feel good about him?
I do. I got to see Nick a little bit behind the scenes. And look, he didn't come off great in his introductory press conference, but that doesn't mean anything. No. I mean, it's understandable. He's a little bit nervous. And I'll tell you what, he's really passionate about football. He really is. It's not an act. His energy, his enthusiasm. And I think that's going to play well. But Dan, things like that play really well when you win. They play really poorly. If he starts losing, look, the epitaph on his tombstone in Philadelphia, if he fails, is going to be rock, paper, scissors. It just is. People are going to rip him. They're never going to let him forget that. However, he's got a chance to turn it around. And the way you turn it around in this league is win, and everybody forgets all the ancillary nonsense. But if you're unsuccessful, they're going to say, rah, rah, high school guy, too much. You can't do this with players. It's not true. Players, and Barrett Brooks always tells me this, the old Eagles offensive lineman, won a Super Bowl with the Steelers. If you can make a player better, and you can probably speak to this, they'll respect you as a coach, position coach, head coach. They just want to get better. They just want to be put in good conditions to succeed.
Absolutely. A couple last questions here for you, John. John, give me the number one thing, or maybe there was a few things that caused the demise of the Doug Peterson era. What, in your opinion, do you think was the catalyst on how this thing went so sideways? So, I mean, what you're lifting the Lombardi Trophy, confetti's falling, and then within a matter of 3 years, it's over. How is that possible that it went south so quick? What happened that you thought was like where you went, that's it right there? Maybe there was a collective thing that happened.
I think Doug finally stood up for himself. One of the things that I will never understand with the Eagles is they didn't allow Doug Peterson to have a lot of autonomy with his coaching staff. And he didn't want to fire Mike Rowe, for instance, as the offensive coordinator. He didn't even want to fire Carson Walsh as the wide receiver coach. He was forced to. When Jeffrey Lurie brought him in, and he was going to keep him as the head coach, but he wanted a plan. What are we going to do moving forward? And Doug wanted to elevate Matt Burke to be the defensive coordinator and Press Taylor to be the offensive coordinator. And Jeffrey said, no, you can't do that. You got to go in a different direction. And this had been going on for about 3 years, really since Frank left. Wasn't allowed autonomy in his coaching staff and said, you know what, this is bull, you know what? I want these guys. This is my plan. And he finally put his foot down, and Jeffrey Lurie said, we're going to go in a different direction. And it's interesting because, and this is very counterintuitive, Dan. I don't understand it. Nick Sirianni was given more autonomy over his coaching staff than Doug Peterson, the guy who won the Super Bowl for Jeffrey Lurie. And the reason I was given behind the scenes is because Nick has developed more relationships around the league because he's been in Pittsburgh, he's been in San Diego, he's been in Indianapolis. Whereas Doug was a player, then he retired, he became a high school coach, and Andy brought him back. And he never left Andy's side. But the counterintuitive part to me is, well, why would you leave Andy Reid's side? To get more experience. Look, if you get fired or you move from place to place in coaching, that means you're not getting it done. Andy Reid, you're getting it done, man. Who else do you want? That's very, very counterintuitive to me. Bottom line, though, is Doug finally put his foot down and wanted his coaches. And Jeffrey, he wanted to direct. And by the way, as the owner, I always say, look, it's your team, especially when it comes to head coach and quarterback. But come on, Jeffrey Lurie, if you're listening, what the hell do you know about the wide receiver coach? Let the guy have his wide receiver coach. And by the way, if he fails with his own coaches, then you fire him. And then I'm fine with it.
Absolutely. Finally here. Yesterday was Ben Simmons' birthday. Did you wish him happy birthday yesterday?
Of course. I say happy birthday to Ben Simmons, but man, you talk about, but we started this conversation about the passion of Philly. You saw the negative end, man. But I'll tell you, Dan, they were so supportive of Ben Simmons for years and years and years until the very end. And he gave up that easy dunk at the end of the game. And they said, that's it. And they completely flipped and turned on him. This guy's ridiculous. We got to move on. That's how quickly they can turn on.
Yeah, but I would say this to you. If you're like, I mean, look at Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz moved his entire family to the Philadelphia area. They wanted to be part of that community. You know, talking to all the players like Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons and all those guys and Andre Waters back in the day. I knew all those Gang Green guys. They all moved to the area, man. They wanted to be part of that community. I never thought that guy ever really, truly ever wanted to be part of that community. You know, when you watch a guy like Giannis and you watch somebody who improves his game like Lamar Jackson, you and I talked about this before when I was filling in for you guys, and you see people working on their game, a community like Philadelphia or Boston or Pittsburgh, places like that love their team, but are going to be passionate about their team, whether it's good or bad. I mean, they're going to give you a couple speed bumps. But when you're not going to produce and you're not thinking about winning or improving your game, and you're considered one of the leaders of that team, man, I think he got what he deserved in the end, man. I mean, let's not forget something. He is making immense money. And when fans see that, it's a blue-collar city, man. You're not going to look at a guy and go, well, this guy's on Instagram chasing down skirts, and he's jumping in his Ferrari, and he's not working on his game, and then he lives in Southern California.
Well, there you have it. Don. Well, here it is, Dan. This team is the number 1 seed. They went through all that losing to get players like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They got the Atlanta Hawks. They think they're going to cakewalk to the Eastern Conference Finals. They lose because Ben Simmons won't take a shot at the end of the game, won't even attempt a shot. And then guess what? They're all disappointed. They got to watch the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis and Drew Holiday, who used to be a Sixer, win an NBA championship. And they're all disappointed and devastated. And Ben Simmons is buying $18 million mansions in Los Angeles and dating BBC spokesmodels at Wimbledon. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit. And that's not Philadelphia. By the way, I don't blame Ben. If I could, I'd be dating the BBC spokesmodel as well. That my wife is out of the house, so I can say that.
Mine too. That's why I say the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm a troller too. Hey, John, I appreciate you doing this, man. Thank you so much, man. It's always great to get a chat with you on this stuff here, man. I love your takes too, man. I love the work that you and Jody do on Birds 365. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Anytime you need me, let me know.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. That is John McMullen. Don't forget, you can catch him right here on the JAKIB Media channel. Yeah. Ben Simmons is chasing skirts. When he said BBC, I was like, what's that? Oh, yeah, that's the British Broadcasting Company. Is that right? See, I don't really care about too many things overseas. Unless it's wine or booze or something, you know, Coronas. That's not something that really – Big Sales is more of like an American deal here. Don't really care. Yeah, no. No, I do like Italian women. Okay, should I leave it there? I think we will. Interesting, too, what he was saying about, you know, how the passionate Philadelphia fans on Carson Wentz. I hate that scumbag. Look at what this guy did to this franchise. Look at what they did. They gave him the money. They turned on him like a dog, didn't they? But see, you got to always say this. Look at it the other side on what's the silver lining of this thing here. If that dude, and by the way, there's no way anybody in Philadelphia wants to see that guy go to an AFC championship game next year. And I think they are. Everybody in Philly is rooting.